Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. Today, our speaker is going to be Ashton Rodenheiser. Ashton is passionate about living the creative spirit in everyone that she meets. For the past 7 years, she has followed her passion for helping people communicate their ideas and married it with creativity by becoming an entrepreneur. You'll often find her with markers in her hand as she's helping bring ideas to life through graphic recording and graphic facilitation practices. She's worked with amazing nonprofits as well as Fortune 500 companies. It may appear as she's only an often silent illustrator in the room. In fact, she's helping to break down complex concepts and notions onto an easily understandable visual language, helping others retain more information while inspiring the people to continue practicing her techniques in the world. Over the years, she has brought close to 1,000 presentations and conversations to life, either on paper or digitally. When she's not working with clients, she's being silly with her 3 young kids and husband in rural Canada. Ashton, I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be spending this time with you today, and I so appreciate you taking some time out of your Saturday afternoon here where I am and wherever it is for you in the world, for taking this time and really diving into how to communicate using a visual language. And if you've been on some of this series with some of my wonderful colleagues, I would love to call them, within the visual communication space, there might be a few things that are repeated, there might be some new ideas, or I hope there's some new ideas. And yeah, looking forward to really spending this time together. So you're here for the getting started with using visuals to communicate ideas. Just to start us off, I would love for you to jump over to mindseyeCreative.ca/VisualizeIT. And there's going to be 2 links on that site. One is for the visual communication method ebook, which is what we're going to focus on here today. So it's a 30-page ebook with lots of drawings in it as well, so that you can have that and follow along. You can follow along with that if you'd like to as well. I will be referring to it consistently. So the ebook is there for you to have, as well as there's a short workbook. It gives you a page per section of the method just to kind of write one key takeaway. So when you click on the buttons on that website, it will immediately download. So hopefully you already have it while I am talking away here. So let me know if anybody has any problems accessing it, and we'll make sure that you at least get it at the end of this session today. So pop over to VisualizeIT, which is the name of this series here today. Okay. Like I said, we're going to be reviewing this visual communication method. And it's something, and I put the ebook out in November, and I've gotten some lovely feedback from it so far. And this is my first opportunity, actually, since I relaunched the ebook in November, to speak publicly about it in a workshop presentation style. And so I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I will at times be pausing to reflect on the ebook myself to make sure that I'm making sure that I'm passing on all the information that I can in each section. So I'll talk a little bit more about it here shortly. So as I'm going through each section of the method, you'll hopefully be able to start piecing together in different ways that you can use this, which I'll also talk about here in a second. But at the end, as long as we have time for it, I will be reviewing a case study based on this photograph here of a session that I did right before COVID happened, actually in person, and how I used every single method of the visual communication method to bring this conversation to light. So 3 key takeaways that I would love for you to have at the end of this session here is, one, that you really truly believe that you can visualize your ideas no matter how little or how much you are drawing. 2, you're visualizing communication helps everyone involved, that becomes a belief. And 3, you can build your confidence. So I'm hoping that we're going to build your confidence today by engaging in this method. So a little bit about me. I will let you know I'm just on a second screen here as well, so I might be flip-flopping back and forth to answer some of your questions. I'm going to try to be mindful of everything here. So please do ask questions as you go along. So if you're not familiar with me at all, my name is Ashton Rodenheiser, and a huge confession I have is that I don't actually work in technology. But while preparing for this presentation, I started doing a little bit of data and found out that 81% of my professional experience in 2020 was within the technology space. So you can see here a few different topics that I've been involved with. You know, a lot of conferences in this space in particular, a lot of capturing of speakers' presentations as a graphic recorder. And when I was also doing this math, I decided, well, what has my whole professional experience to date? What's the number? And it actually came out to be the exact same number, which I thought was pretty wild. So 81% of my whole professional experience has been within the technology space. So 81% in 2020 and 81% total, which I think is pretty wild. A lot of people like to know kind of how I ended up in this space in the first place. So I'll just give you a quick story of kind of how I landed here. So I started in my early professional career working at a nonprofit family organization, and at that organization I started learning a lot about community development, which then also led into learning about facilitation work and what does that look like. And I really fell in love with facilitation and how you can hold and host space for a group to be able to think through their ideas, help them bring out their own wisdom, and really reflect that. And in facilitation, you're doing that a lot in words. So you're feeding back to the group in words what it is that they're saying. A few years into that, I had heard about just a one-day course on graphic fundamentals, and within that description of that workshop, talked about graphic facilitation. I said, well, I really love facilitation work and I've always been very creative. So I took that course really not even knowing what it was. And after that one day, totally fell in love with this idea of graphic facilitation and how you can help people visualize their ideas and doing that in a facilitation type setting. So that's just a very quick sort of story of how I got here in the first place. So I'm just going to quickly compare the visual communication idea with a Christmas photo of my family. So when you first start putting pen to paper and are thinking, okay, how can I try to explain these ideas in a visual way, you know, you're going for the best possible scenario. So for me, this was a 2019 photo of my family, not 2020, but this was our Christmas photo. You can see, you know, it's pretty good. It's in focus. Mostly everybody's looking, and well, everyone's looking in the direction of the camera, maybe not at the actual camera, but they're looking in the direction. That was pretty positive. Everyone's smiling. We've got great lighting. Like, it's a pretty good picture. That's like the best that I think we could have been able to pull off that day. But also while trying to get this picture, this also happened. So it's still a picture of our family. It still is getting the point across, but it's a little not perfect. It's a little odd. You know, we've got people not looking. It's a bit dark in some areas. I don't know what face I'm making here. It's very awkward. And then we've got my son in the background who is just not having it. And is this an ideal family photo? Maybe not. It's kind of hilarious, and I did share it with my family and friends, but it's maybe not what I was going for. It's getting the point across, definitely like, this is us, this is our family, but it's not necessarily the perfect picture that I wanted to create. So what I would love to challenge you as you're going forward in your visual communication journey is that, yes, we might be striving for the picture before this one, like, everything's even, the lighting, everyone's looking and smiling, but we might end up with this picture, and that's absolutely okay. So why did I put this ebook together and this method together in the first place? Well, especially with COVID, now more than ever, we are experiencing the importance of communication. I was just reflecting as I was writing this out about how, I think it was the very first Monday there back last week, January 4th, when Slack went down and Twitter blew up. And I don't use Slack a lot, but I use it enough to realize that this was not a good thing, and how everyone was trying to figure out how they were going to communicate with one another when their main communication method has gone down. So not just Slack as that example, but in so many different ways, working remotely, everything kind of shifting online, how we communicate with people and how effective we can be with that communication is just so important. And like I said, now more than ever, we're experiencing how important it is to have really efficient, really effective ways of communicating with one another. And I believe that using visuals and using a visual communication method like this, or using visual language, could really help amplify and make sure that we're really feeling connected to one another and that we're getting the best work done that we possibly can. So I hope as we go through this as well, as you can understand why I feel so strongly about this idea. So here's a few different ways that you can use this visual communication method. You can use it for personal note-taking. You can use it in meetings, brainstorms, different workshops and presentations that you're sitting in on, strategy sessions. Honestly, in any situation where someone's trying to get an idea across to someone else, that's an opportunity for you to be able to use the ideas in this method. So there's going to be two things that I'll focus on today, is more so meetings and personal note taking. I'll probably talk more about meetings. I'll just use meetings as like very general. But if I have a few ideas of how it can amplify your personal note taking, I'll sneak those in there as well. The ebook focuses on those two as well. But meetings could be strategy sessions, they could be workshops, and they could be brainstorms or whatever, but I'll just kind of keep it general into those two scenarios. So hopefully that's helpful. So the visual communication method, I created in a series, there's 8 pieces to it, and the order is very specific in how I put it together. Kind of starts with sort of the low-hanging fruit, shall we say, and sort of the really basic foundational pieces, and they build on one another to the very end. Things get a little bit more complicated as they go around. But I also created this in a way that if you just want to focus on one aspect, you can pull out the piece. You can see here I've sort of highlighted 2 just randomly. But if you really want to focus on, your consistency and your speed, or your, how to sketch and how to draw things out, you can just pull those things out, leave the rest, come back to it another time, incorporate it later if you want. But I think it's really valuable to kind of go through these like step by step so that you can see how they build on one another. So like a pizza, like thinking about this as a piece of pizza, the method could be represented that way. If you're really, really hungry, you could eat the whole pizza. You could take all 8 methods, implement them right away, and go for it. If you're just feeling like you want to snack a little bit, then maybe you just want to take one piece, and maybe one piece of the method will really resonate with you, and that's great. So just take that piece, digest it, implement it however you may. So I like sort of this idea of pizza. So I created this little pizza ops, which actually was an inspiration from a conference that I did a few months ago. This kind of came up as a joke, this pizza ops idea. So I created these die cut stickers of this visual. So for being here today and hanging out with me, I would love to mail you a sticker, a little die cut sticker that I got printed. So if you would like me to mail you a free pizza off sticker, please just send an email to order@mindseyeCreative.ca, and I will mail them out to you probably next week. So I've got them, I just received them in the mail last week. So I'd love to send everybody, just as a thank you for coming here today, a free sticker. So feel free to email me with maybe in the subject, just put #PizzaOpsWorkshop. And in there, just let me know where to send the sticker to, and I'll get that out to you next week. Anywhere in the world too, it's fine. All right, so I hope you enjoy that. Just a few things as we're getting started here still. You'll see here as I'm going through this, that in the bottom left-hand corner will be the part of the method that we're going to be talking about. So if you're lost along the way, then you can refer to that, as well as the section title. So all of the sections have a C and an S word. It just kind of worked out that way. If you're lost or you're not sure where we are, what's going on, if you want to jump to that section of the ebook so you can kind of follow along some of the things I'm talking about, there's just that little cheat sheet there at the bottom to kind of guide you along the way here. So there's three sort of main words that I'll be talking about kind of interchangeably. I just want to define them really quickly so you know what it is. So capture. When I say the word capture, it means that you are physically doing something. So you're writing something on a piece of paper, or you're drawing on your iPad, or you're listening and you're capturing something. Like you're listening to something and you're drawing something. So it's the action. When I say the word capture, it's more of the action into actually doing something. The word chart represents whatever the physical or digital way that you're capturing. So it will be whatever the outcome is. So the graphic, the whole piece, whether it's on like a digital image or a big piece of paper, it's sort of the thing where it lives. And then the session, like I said before, I'll mostly be talking about meetings, but I might use the word session. So hopefully that kind of helps as well. So when I say the word, those three different words, you can kind of understand what it is that we're talking about here. All right, so I would love to hear if you have any questions so far. I'm just going to peek at my other screen here. I would love, I'm reading your comments. Okay, I'm just going to read your comments here quickly and see if there's any cryptocurrency. Yeah, I did a cryptocurrency conference in December, and it was extremely, the timing of it was very interesting. It's very fascinating. I love that you resonated, whoever that was, resonated with the family picture. I love it. And is this going to work better on PC currently on a tablet? Maybe that's a question for the moderator. Also, maybe what I'll encourage you to do, there are going to be a few little activities where you'll have a chance to actually do some writing and drawing. So if you could, hopefully you already have it close by, but some paper or pens or markers or whatever you have, it's fine. If you want to draw on a tablet or a screen, that's okay too. But yeah, so I'm going to try to keep an eye on this. I'm going to try to keep an eye on your comments. I'm noticing there's a little bit of a lag, so I'm going to keep an eye on your comments and try to answer them. The method does build on itself, so there is a good chance that the question will be answered later on. And we'll see how we're doing for time. And depending on where we are, I'd like to take just like a 10-minute break about halfway through. And then I'm hoping that we can leave lots of time for questions and comments here at the end. So let me know if I'm just wondering, that looks like there might be someone that's having a hard time hearing me. So if that's the case, let me know. Oh, right. Okay, so part one. So part one is the least exciting one. So we're going to get out of the way right away. Part 1 really reflects on the getting clear and specific about what it is that you're getting yourself into. So if you are going to be the person to help visualize this idea, there's questions that you really need to answer before you ever put pen to paper. And I think the thing is we see is the drawing part, right? We see the outcome. But what we have to really be mindful of is all of the work and all the processes and things and thoughts that go into it before we actually ever put a pen to a paper at all, or a digital pen to a tablet at all. And like I said, this is like not the most exciting work, but it's really, really foundational for you to really get set up to be successful. So one of the questions like I had here, what does success look like? You know, when this visual is complete, what is that going to look like? How is that going to move your conversation forward? How it's going to move your company forward, however you're using it in the session. So a couple questions here. What's the goal? What are you hoping that this visual is going to communicate? Who's going to own it at the end of the day? Is it a piece where your team is owning, or is this something that you're just doing for yourself? You know, what are the things? How are we going to capture this information so that we see what it is that we need to do? Like, what's our next steps? What are those action items? How are we measuring? What's our measurements going to be? What are our objectives? What are the outcomes? What's the impact that we're trying to have? Right? The answers are going to be different depending on the situation, depending on what the session is. If it's the brainstorming, if it's strategic planning, or if it's just for yourself. Maybe if you're capturing a speaker at a conference, for example, there's not going to be a whole lot of answers for you. So answering these questions could take, you know, less than a minute to 30 or 60 minutes if you're talking as a team of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So it could be really easy. This part could be extremely easy, or it could be really difficult if you're working together with a team. Another important thing to really be mindful of is taking the time to write it down. And I know even for myself, this happens all the time. You wouldn't think it, but it does. That, you know, the power of writing something down, writing down the goal, writing down what does success look like, what is it that you're trying to achieve, is so more powerful than just saying in my mind, oh yeah, I know what it is that I'm trying to achieve, right? So taking that time, just writing it, like scribbling it down really quickly on a piece of paper, just to say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish here, and this is why I'm spending the time. This is why I'm investing the effort into capturing it in this way. Okay, I'm going to keep referring back to part 1 as we go through these next steps, reminding you as we go along. So part 2, I'll look at part 2 and then I'll look and see if there's any questions here in the thing. So part 2 really talks about consistency and speed. And one of the things before we even start talking about drawing at all is really nailing and getting your lettering down. So what I would love for you to do now is we're just going to do a quick lettering exercise. So on your piece of paper, what I would love for you to do is going to take 60 seconds, and I want you to write the alphabet as quickly and just as quickly as possible. Don't give it much thought. Just write it as quickly as possible. If you miss a letter, that's totally fine. So we're going to start that now. So I want you to go right ahead and write the alphabet as quickly as you possibly can. Don't think too much. Don't worry about your letter forms, nothing. Just write it down in whatever your natural handwriting is. I prefer to write everything in capitals, but if you want to do all lowercase or whatever, I'm just going to keep an eye on my time here, and I'm going to let some time go by as you're writing the alphabet out as quickly as you possibly can. We need some Jeopardy music playing. I should have queued that up, Jeopardy music. Okay, so next thing I want you to do, next part of the exercise, part 2 of 3, is I want you to write out the alphabet as slowly and carefully as you possibly can. So you go right ahead and do that. Slowly and carefully as you possibly can. This takes a little bit more time, so I'll give you a little bit more time. All right, I'm going to give you another 10 seconds. It's okay if you aren't finished your alphabet, it's fine. Okay, so the third and last part of this exercise is I want you to write out the alphabet. What we're looking for here is a happy medium. I want you to write it as quickly as you can, but as clean and clear as you possibly can. So try to find this happy medium where you're writing quickly, but as legibly as possible. So I'm going to get you to go ahead and do that. Give you about 20 more seconds. All right, so I hope, thank you for doing this exercise. I hope it's helpful to really start to lay that foundation in how you can be quick with how you capture words, but also as legibly as possible. Especially if you're going to be doing it in an in-person session, if that happens again on paper or on a whiteboard or something, you want to make sure that you're capturing things quickly, but then as legibly as possible so that everybody in the room can read what you're writing. If you have to decipher it for people all the time, that's not going to be as beneficial. There might be also a few letters in there where you aren't happy with, and that's great actually, because now you know which ones you can practice a little bit. All right, if you have any questions about that exercise, please let me know. All right, so another thing to help you with your lettering is recognizing that consistency is crucial. It's so important. So here's a little example here. The first line is a little bit more complicated to read than the second one and the one on the bottom. So think about, and this is something I learned, it took me a few years actually to learn over time, is how important those consistent letter forms are. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day how you're writing them, as long as they're legible. But keeping each letter consistent is really important. So you can see here in the word consistent, my S's have a similar look and vibe to them. They're not exactly the same, but they're similar enough, whereas the ones above it are very different. So we're looking to make sure that we don't confuse people's eyes, because subconsciously people take that in, and we don't want them to be distracted by something like this. We want this as a tool to help them stay engaged and engage them. But if they're seeing things that aren't consistent, that's really hard. Another thing maybe I'll just talk about consistency is when you're making a mark. So if it's drawing, let's just use a circle or a box as an example. If you're drawing a circle or a box, you want to make sure to connect them so that we also don't distract people while they're looking at an image, because their brain will want to make those connections. So their brain will want to finish what it looks like. So if we have that, if we don't kind of, put all the lines and connect all the edges, like all the corners of a box, for example, then they're not gonna, if we don't do that, then subconsciously their brain is going, oh, I have to connect those lines, that they're supposed to be connected. It's the way that our brains work. So just another sort of tip there about trying to keep consistent with any marks that you make as well. A few little tips here on how to be quick, because this is about consistency and speed, right? So we want to be quick with our lettering, which is why we did that exercise. But in lettering and everything, we also have to take into consideration speed, because one of the questions that we have to answer from part 1 is how much time do we have, right? So a hack that I use is by starting a sentence and then coming back to it later. If someone is debriefing a conversation that they had and they might be talking really quickly and we need to capture that information, it might be difficult to do that if they're talking very quickly, or maybe we don't have the luxury to be able to ask them to slow down, say if it's like a presentation, for example. So you can start to write out a sentence, but then just go back and fill it in later. So put as many letters as you think you need in that moment to then trigger you to remember what the word was, and you can go back and fill it in later. So just a tip there. I just mentioned time. Like I said, you always have to take into consideration how much time you have to really balance that speed that you have. Another tip on consistency of speed is what I call blocking your text. So instead of writing out how we normally would, how most of us probably learned in school, is very left to right in long sentences, I would encourage you to look at, when you're writing out a sentence, block it into like a square, for example. You can see here without the lines around it that the one on the bottom that the arrow is pointing to says, I am writing something awesome, but it sort of looks like a square. This allows you to be able to chunk your ideas a lot better to kind of contribute to that consistency and speed. Whereas if you're writing long sentences, physically, you might take you a long time, or you might have to move your screen over. It just takes longer. Whereas you start the idea of like chunking your text or blocking them out in boxes. You could put boxes around them later, or as well. We'll talk about that later, but just an idea to kind of help kind of keep things together. All right, I'm going to move on to part 3. I'm not seeing any questions about part 1 or part 2. I'll just give it maybe a few seconds and see if there's any questions about part 1 or part 2. And if not, we'll continue on. Like I said, I'm so grateful for you to be here today. This is a good opportunity for me to talk through these ideas. So, all right, I'll keep an eye on this. All right, so part 3 is taking into consideration your chart and your surface, and what does that look like? So like I said, I'm just going to keep referring back to part 1 because it's very important. There's a few questions that you have to answer, like, where is this going to live? Who owns it? How does it need to be shared, if at all, later with a group? Answering some of those questions will help you decide how it is that you want to capture, what method you want to use to capture this information. So I'm just going to highlight the 3 sort of main ones that I come across and I get questions about quite often. Is paper, whiteboard, and digital. I think with most people working remotely right now, or a lot of people anyways, digital might just be your default. It certainly has become my default, but I certainly do also capture in paper if the client specifically requests it, because they might have a use for it later. Like they might want to hang it up in their office or do something with it. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm just reading some of the comments there. So like I said, going back and answering those questions from part 1 or adding to those questions of how it's going to be used, who needs it, in what way, will help you be able to determine what's the best way to capture this information. So paper. So this could be small if you're doing personal note taking, or large if you're doing a group session. Some pros is it's inexpensive, relatively. Even large rolls of paper are actually very inexpensive. It's very tactile. You know, we don't have the opportunity to manipulate our information like we have, like we normally can. It's definitely novel when you have that opportunity to actually interact with your words. And then because folks can physically contribute to it. You can incorporate sticky notes. There's like the physicality of it, the body movement and how our bodies benefit from moving around when we're talking about information. Like I don't know about you, but I pace a lot when I'm on the phone. Gets me thinking. It gets those different opportunities to kind of think through some of those ideas in a different way when you're using your body to do that. So some cons: difficult to make changes. Potentially, even if you do take a picture of it and then turn it into digital, you have to be able to do that post, which can be challenging. It's totally possible. It's just a little bit more difficult. Can be difficult to store if it's large, or ink will fade over time. So it might not be ideal if you don't have the space for it and stuff like that. And like I said, it will fade and deteriorate over time. So whiteboard. So this might be, if you, like I said, when we go back in person, if that's the case, there's a lot of offices have whiteboards. So there's definitely pros and cons to them as well. I'm just going to walk through them. If you have one on wheels, you can easily move it around. So you don't have to worry about like taking paper and moving it around. You can just wheel them around, or you can bring people into a room that has one. Great for smaller meetings, a large surface with minimal setup. As long as you have the right markers close by, you're good to go. Yeah, like paper takes an extra few minutes to set up, whereas whiteboard is right there. So cons: slippery surface, can be hard to draw and write on and smudge easily. That's pretty much the #1 reason why I am not a huge fan of whiteboards, is I haven't used them enough to get really comfortable with them and really understand the feel of them to make sure that I can do my lettering really clear and my drawings really clear on them. And then you always have to be mindful that you're not going over and smudging. I definitely feel for left-handers, because that would be really difficult. They can be difficult to keep after, so you have to photograph them. And I find photographing a whiteboard can be a bit funny. There's glare. And so if you need to keep it after, if when you ask yourself those questions, if that's really important, that's just something to kind of keep in mind. You have to make sure that someone takes a picture of it before you leave the room, or the next group might come in and erase all your hard work. Not easy to transport for offsite. So if you're doing anything outside of the office, then it's going to be quite difficult to use. So digital, which I think a lot of people are probably using now, especially myself, is so some pros: great for personal note taking, or really any, when you start to incorporate or large scale, like meeting sessions. You can use Zoom, Whiteboard, you can use drawing apps and bring them in. There's lots of pros around that. You can project to screens. You can make quick edits and instant sharing. So they're really, in terms of being quick, they're really beneficial to be able to use that. So cons: there can be expensive unless you already have the device. There is a bit of a learning curve to get used to drawing on a screen, and they're not good for more than one person capturing. So if you're in a session and you need that interactive piece, that can be a little bit more difficult. There's some really great tools out there that I've been using the last few months, like Mural, where you can kind of create it as like a digital working space so people can be in it. Sometimes I've incorporated templates in it, like download the template and then people are working on it. So like I said in question 1, answering some of those questions ahead of time, really can help you understand what's the best method and how you're going to use it. I'll just let you know, because I have a feeling this question's going to come up because people always want to know what I am using. So I'm actually a super fan of Microsoft Surface. So a couple years ago, when I was looking at getting a new device, I wanted something that I could draw on and that it would be my computer. I'm a bit of a minimalist, so I don't like having, even though I have so many markers and things, I do try to be very minimal in how many devices and things that I have in my life. And so I have a Surface, a couple of them, and I use a program that's actually free. It's called Autodesk Sketchbook, and it's minimal in program, but it's great. I think for me, my suggestion would be for digital work is that you choose what works for you, what you want to use, and then just use that program. Like, practice on that program and don't jump around to a whole bunch of different programs, because once you get comfortable with one, then you're great, you're good to go. And I think that's why I learned Autodesk Sketchbook about 2 years ago, and I've never learned any other ones, because it's great. I'm comfortable with it. I can switch between colors and markers and things really quickly because I know how to do it. So that would just be my suggestion on the digital work. I don't see any other comments that have come in, but please do make some comments or ask some questions if you have them. I'll keep checking them after every part here. So part number 4 is connection and story. So we are storytellers by nature. It's just in our blood. And some of my favorite talks that I've captured over the last little while are ones where people are incorporating either on their own personal story or something that happened at work. People relate to stories, and we tell stories all the time without even realizing it. And stories are perfect when it comes to capturing information and helping people communicate those ideas, because they just lend themselves to so much fun. So one thing that I always take into consideration when I'm capturing a story is how much detail do I need to incorporate, and what is the core message of this story. So I usually lean in on focusing on capturing the main idea of the story, what was like the conclusion, and leave out the details of how it led them there, unless I felt like they were important to understand. So sometimes I'll draw a picture that relates to the details of the story, but then put the conclusion as the learning piece to share, because that's what people are really going to want to remember. A colleague of mine in sort of the graphic facilitation space, Anthony Weeks, he says stories are rooted in personal experience, and we like to relate to one another, right? And we like to hear people's personal experience and how we are in a really kind of amazing, we have this amazing opportunity as the person who's going to be capturing this information, especially in a visual way, to be able to bring those stories and bring them to life and create like a longevity to them, I think is so amazing. And I always try to be in a space of being so grateful to be able to be the one who hears those stories. And I really honor that space that people give me as the person who's capturing, to really hold space for their stories. So I think just take into consideration how important stories are to what you're listening to, and listen for stories as people are capturing them, because those are the things that people are going to remember. And if you can highlight it in a visual way, then it's like bonus. Sometimes people will refer to this work as like a story map. I don't often, but it certainly could be. You could certainly call what this work is, or if you're, however you're doing it, as like a story map or story mapping. I've had people call me visual storyteller, which I thought was really fun. I don't tend to call myself that on a daily basis, but I totally appreciate it when people call me a visual storyteller, because at the end of the day, that's a lot of what this work is rooted in, is helping build connection through stories. I'm trying to think what else I have to say about that. I feel like I have something else to say about connection, but it's not in my brain right now. So I might come back to that later. I'll move on to the next section here. Okay, so there's oh yeah, just highlighting the importance of the connecting one another there. So this method is 8 parts, and part number 5 we're starting to get into drawing a little bit. And when I was putting this together, I was so tempted to put the sketching and drawing part at the beginning, because that's what people want to learn. That's what people want to know more about. And I totally honor that. And like I said, there's so much to learn and think about before you even put pen to paper. And that's why I felt really good about putting this part of the method later on, so that people could understand the value that getting your lettering down, getting some of that consistency there, asking those questions, understanding how you're holding space, deciding how you're going to draw it, or what surface that you're going to capture it on. All that stuff is so foundational, like I said, before you even put pen to paper. And I feel like when I first started out, I obviously focused, because that's what we want to do. We want to do the fun thing. We focus on the drawing part. But then when we start to actually do the drawing part, we're like, what am I doing? What am I capturing? I don't understand. And I think if you really lean in on the first 4 parts and understand those pieces and ask yourself those questions and answer those questions, the drawing part just, I feel, comes so much more easy. You have a better understanding of what it is that you're going to draw and why you're going to draw it when you have already done those foundational pieces and asked yourself those questions. So what I think we're going to do is we're going to start, I hope you have some paper still close by. I want you to have that out, and whatever pen or pencil or markers or whatever you crayons that you have, please get those out. And we're just going to quickly go through a few what I call the essential drawing elements. And you'll see they're pretty basic. And if you've done sketchnoting before, you probably are going to be familiar with some of these. But even if you've done some of these before, I highly recommend still going through them and just drawing some out, because what we're doing here is we're building a visual vocabulary, so that when someone says, I have a great idea, your brain automatically goes, I know how to draw a light bulb. Here's a light bulb. Or I'm trying to think of another example. Yeah, but at the foundation, we're looking at building that visual vocabulary. So the more you draw these things out, the better your brain is going to like it. To me, I call it a visual language, because it really is like you're learning another language. So when you're learning a spoken language, when you hear a word, you translate it quickly and then say that word. So when you hear a word, you translate it quickly into a picture, and then you draw that picture. All of the decision making that you can take out of this process, the better. So if you don't have to think about, oh my gosh, how do I draw a light bulb? You just know how to draw. You pick one style of light bulb and you know how to draw it. You don't even have to think about it. That's what you're going to do. So like I said, no matter how many times you've drawn these things out, and as simple as they are, I highly encourage you to do it. You think like, I know how to draw a box, like draw the box, because your brain, every time you draw that box, you're going to solidify the knowing and the confidence about how to draw something, so that you don't trip yourself up. And I think for me, one of the biggest obstacles for people in doing this work is the confidence and that hesitation. So what we're looking for is taking that hesitation away. Okay, so I hope you're ready. I think what we're going to do in the interest of time is we're going to do probably a couple, and I'm going to give you space. I want to take some room to breathe here. And I want you to just look at some of the examples that I have and draw. We're going to go through a couple of them. And then I think what we're going to do is we're just going to take a quick 10-minute break. Just get people, you can continue to draw if you like. Just give everybody a breather because we're going to be about at the halfway mark. And give people 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and then we'll finish the rest of number 5. Do the last 3, and then I'm going to go through a case study of piecing all of these aspects together. So I just wanted to let everybody know that that's my plan. Okay, so concept and sketch. Like I just spent the last couple minutes like bringing us up to speed about why we're doing this and why it's number 5. So the first part in I want to say one of the elements. There's no hierarchy here really within the elements, but one of the elements that I like to talk about first are bullets. And bullets are really awesome for making lists. They're great for showcasing information that are related to other ideas. They're really great for separating information, but then they can also bring this like illustrative element into whatever it is that you're capturing. Consistency is really, important. You can tie them into a theme if you want to. You can very quickly show things that you want to work towards, like a list of, check marks, or a list of things that maybe you don't want to do anymore. You've got your happy face, your sad face, like I have here as an example. And yeah, they're just a really great way of being able to, like I said, add those sort of like illustrative elements in it without drawing a whole lot. So we've got some very simple ones here. So I would love for you just to take this time to practice drawing out some of these ones. Check marks, happy face, sad face, a simple circle bullet, a box, a heart, a star, a diamond, a swirl. And if you do a lot of this work and practice it a lot, you'll find that you are drawn to doing certain ones. I certainly have. I love the check mark with the box around it or with the circle around it. Those are my favorite to do. But you'll find which ones that you can be consistent about, that are easy to be consistent and quick. So that's another question to answer when, like I said, about how much time do you have. You can take into consideration, well, if this is an 8-hour session, then maybe my bullets could be 3 colors, and this, a light bulb. It could be, every bullet could be a light bulb or something. And whereas, and maybe you have the luxury of time to do that during like 8 hours. But if you're doing like a 30-minute speaker presentation, personal note taking, it's a little bit more difficult to spend a lot of time doing illustrative elements like with bullets, because it just takes too much time. So as I'm rambling here, I hope that you're drawing out these different ideas and that just these few inspire other ideas as well. Maybe what I will offer as well is I have some cheat sheets of all of these elements as well. If you'd like to get the cheat sheets of like a whole page of different styles of bullets, you can also email me at order@mindsedecreative.ca and just let me know you'd like the cheat sheets, and I can certainly send those to you as well. All right. So the next one are lines. So lines are really great to help connect and separate and enclose ideas. If you have one idea on one part of your, I'll just call it paper for now, on your paper, or digital screen, whatever it is, and you need to be able to connect an idea that ended up on the other side, you can use simple lines to help connect them. I've been using a lot of little simple lines to kind of spark, or highlight, by sparking a word. When I say spark, it's like little lines, just little lines around the word. Or if you put one or a couple lines underneath the word, it brings attention to it as a little bit more important, maybe for people to pay attention to. So we've got the very first one is just a simple line. Different types of wavy lines, zigzags. I love dashed and dotted lines. Dotted can take a little bit more time, but dashed ones are so fun. And this is another opportunity for you to let your creative juices flow in terms of the illustrative aspect to the lines as well, and how to connect those ideas, but do it in a fun way. By adding a little bit more of that sort of fun illustrative opportunity to it. A line could also help separate ideas, like I said. So if you have some information that doesn't relate at all to some of the other information that you have, you can very clearly make some large lines or even some really thick ones to say this is different than this information without actually having to write out like this doesn't relate to this or whatever. I feel like this is like a workshop of like confessions, but another confession of mine is around with lines is that I shied away from them for a long time and I didn't really use them as much as I could have, and I don't even know why, to be honest with you. But the last little while, in the last year or so, I would say I've just been embracing them a lot more. I'm not sure. I almost like I'm like excited to draw different lines and how they look within a piece. But yeah, they're really, really helpful and useful. All right, I think we're going to go through one more element and then we're going to take our break. Alrighty. So one of my favorites are boxes. Boxes or containers, whatever you want to call them. They can have similar uses to lines in terms of helping separate ideas by enclosing them into a shape. And yeah, at their most basic, they are ultimately lines around things. So you're just upping your line game in a way. It's really, so a tip around boxes or containers is if you're going to be putting information in them, like words, is you want to look at your space and make sure you have enough space around whatever it is that you've captured already. Write out the words, and this is where the tip about with consistency and speed and blocking your text and chunking your text comes into play. So block your text and then put your box around it, because you'll find yourself in a situation where you've written out your thing, you've drawn your box, and then you try to write your thing inside of it and you run out of space. That's the worst. So write your thing, block it, box it, and then draw your box around it. These, I would say, are some of my favorites. I do lots of different versions of speech bubbles, and I kind of like the second one there on the top, like a box that has a little bit of, I always say energy, a box with a little bit of energy, a little bit of wave to it, to kind of make it look like a sticky note of sorts. I love doing the ones that it looks like a clipboard, or the one where it's pinned up, and banners are so popular as well. So creating banners are really fun. I love doing the signpost one too. So I hope you've already done it, or you're in the process of drawing out some of these ones. If you need help drawing a banner, let me know later. I also have a cheat sheet on that I can send you. And yeah, I'll just see if there's anything else I want to say about boxes. They are my most favorite ones to draw. I think the only other thing is I should mention is that sometimes, not always the case, but sometimes if every single piece of information that you've drawn on or put on the chart that you've captured is in a box, then the viewer looking at it might question or be confused around how that information is separated and what might be more important than others, or what belongs with what. So just be mindful of when you use them and how often you use them. You know, sometimes if there was a conversation that all related to one another, I'll chunk my text and then I'll do a bunch of chunks of text, then I'll put a bunch of speech bubbles, and they're all one area. And to me, that signifies there was a conversation there. And actually, there's an example of that later in the case study when we get to it. And yeah, so like you can group ideas also within the boxes, but then if you also had a whole bunch of speech bubbles close by, it might be confusing to the person. There's not enough space there in between them. That, well, does that conversation relate to this conversation? Like, do they live together? So just a thing to kind of be mindful when you're doing your boxes, that they're amazing and they're awesome, but making sure that you don't overdo it, which is probably my problem, is that I want to overdo it with them, because then they can start to kind of lose their meaning a little bit. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. I think I'm on. Okay, let's try this. Can you give me a thumbs up, team, in the chat, that I know that you can hear and see me again? I'm just going to wait a second before I get started. I don't want to be talking to nobody. So in the meeting chat, if you wouldn't mind, team, just letting me know that we're all good. I see that you're typing, so I'm assuming yes, perfect. Okay, so sorry for that weird technical thing. I was literally just about to say, we're going to take our 10-minute break now, and my computer just like died. It just went into the blue screen of death. So anyways, yeah, so thank you for being with me here so far. I'm so grateful. I'm just going to take a quick moment to say a few things about what I read or am reading in the comments here. I'm probably going to refer to some of them later. I'm just going to quickly go through a few things. I'm really glad that someone liked the idea of chunking some of the content. I love that. Was wondering if there was any places that is best suited and places where it might not be. I think that's an opportunity, and this is probably my answer for a lot of questions. You just got to start practicing. You just got to see what feels right for you. I think you can chunk as much as you want. I think you're going to benefit from it for sure. Like digital, even without COVID troubles. Yep, digital's a great way to do it. Is it a good idea to capture ideas in paper and then transfer to digital, or should I focus and try to do it directly to digital, even if it could be double work? I think as you're starting out, doing the double is not a bad idea. Like, I know some people that completely sketch out everything before they actually do the work. So I think it's totally up to you on how you want to do it, for sure. Also, curious to know, had teams use digital? If you have had teams to use digital shared whiteboards in online events, and how that compares to the in-room versions for both creativity and collaboration. Great question. Yes, I haven't done a whole bunch of teams use digital shared whiteboards. Yes, I've used Mural. That's been the program, the online software that I've used the most. I think it goes back to how you want to share and if it's beneficial for everybody to be on the same board. That's why Mural is a really good way to do that, because you can have like virtual sticky notes. Being in person, I think, is really great creatively and collaboratively. But I think what you need to think about if you're doing it digitally, how you're not just trying to replace it, but you're trying to be in a space where you're creating a new experience. You're not trying to replace an old one. Because if you're trying to replace an old one, it's going to be pretty much impossible. It's very, very difficult to replace what you would do in person to doing it in a digital way. So you have to think a bit more creatively on how you're going to do it and create the engagement that you desire, but doing that in a digital way. So that just means different ways of doing it. And if we have time at the end and you want to know more, we can certainly talk about that. Digital tools, I think I already spoke about that. If you have specific digital tool questions for me, I can answer them. I'm not a pro by any means when it comes to knowing all the things, because I usually just use Autodesk, which I did link here that I hope everybody saw. Visual vocabulary, I'm really glad that that resonated with you. That's awesome. And I put the link to the sketchbook. It's free, which is awesome. If you, like I said, if you need guidance on drawing banners, send me an email and I will send you a cheat sheet on that, okay? Okay, I think we're all caught up in the comments. So, okay, I'm going to try to buzz through the rest of these things because I do want to talk about the case study quickly and then try to leave some time for questions. All right, so the next element, I hope you have your paper close by. The next element that we're going to talk about are arrows. I love arrows so much because they can show that direction, they show that flow, they can help connect ideas as well. They're just a really great visual tool to have in your toolkit. So if you follow this formula, 1, 2, 3, on how to draw an arrow, you'll be able to draw an arrow that's like equal in size every time. I always want to use the word wonky. You'll never draw a wonky arrow again, but maybe that's not the right word to use. But if you think about drawing a box with an open end, and then you're kind of playing connect the dots and you're imagining down the middle a point, and then you're connecting those dots. So you can actually literally put the dots, the 3 dots, equal distance on each end, and then imagine the one out in the middle and then connect them, then you're going to be golden. So then take this time to practice that. It's also in the ebook, so refer to that as well. Take this opportunity to practice drawing out your box, or you can do like that one there is a bit of a wave. As long as you have that open end that you can do the dots and then connect them, you're going to be great. So this just allows you to be able to play around with drawing out different styles. I did a whole chart one time, like 4x8 chart, and the one that you see down there in the bottom where the arrow goes onto the arrow goes onto the arrow, like it could be infinite arrows going into other arrows. And yeah, I did a whole chart of, I think it ended up being 6 very, very large arrows, and each arrow had its own content. So that was really fun. I haven't done one, that was a long time ago now. I haven't done one for a long time like that, but it was really, it worked really well. You can use arrows like that as well. And like, we're not gonna have time to talk about like template design today, but you could also use like that kind of style and doing different templates and stuff as well. So I'll just give you a quick, maybe 30 more seconds to play around with drawing some arrows. I would highly challenge you, maybe, you know, you can certainly do it now or later, but challenge yourself to draw, like push the limits, like the one there on the bottom that has a big curve, you know, do one that has lots of curves and is like, you know, going into itself, like challenge yourself to do ones that you think are going to be really difficult so you can just get comfortable and get used to drawing them. And also, I should say that a simple line with a point at the end completely does the job. You don't have to have this sort of large sort of bubble version of an arrow where you could put information in or whatever. You can certainly just use a line with a point will completely do the job of helping connect those ideas too. So, okay, so if you're not new to sketchnoting, or yeah, you've probably heard of the star person. So, but if you haven't, I will just quickly go through the idea of drawing people. And people end up being the one thing that people get very intimidated to draw. And so a star person here at the top is a great introduction in practicing how to draw little different people figures. So if you imagine a star, the top of it becomes the head, and then you have your arm, it turns into the arms and legs. And then if you remove those lines, then you've got your star person. The great thing about a star person with the arms and the legs in this way is that you can draw it with point, you can point their arms and legs in many different directions while doing it in a quick and consistent way, right? Going back to the second part of the book, or the method rather, we have the consistency and speed. So being able to draw really quick people figures like this is really important. You can change it up. I've got what I call a box, a bean, and a squiggle person. So play around, embrace the different styles that you like to draw in, or you want to practice kind of developing your own style, what that looks like by trying out these different styles of people. You'll see here as well with the ones on the bottom, if they've got lines with the little circles, you don't have to put the circles, that's my preference, but you can also see how you could move their arms and legs in different directions to be able to, you know, point to information or hold information or whatever it is. So if you like to draw different cartoon styles, if you have a little style that you like to draw, I say go for it. You know, draw the little cartoon people that you like to draw. What I did years ago is what I would do is just practice. I remember just put up this big piece of paper one day and I drew my little cartoon people, which have now changed drastically, but at the time would draw them and draw it, draw it, draw it, and draw it over and over and over and over again, and trying to get quicker and quicker every single time to make sure that I've got all the lines connected, but I've got my person drawn very, very fast, right? To go back to part 2 of the method is the consistency and the speed of it, right? So at the end of the day, we always have to take the time constraint into consideration, but drawing people, I feel like, is very, very crucial and important to the process because we are involved in the conversation and we should be represented there in some way. So I hope you had a few minutes to just practice those. As well as shadows and shading. I won't talk about that too much today, but at the end of the day, what you want to do is imagine where your light source is. For me, it always ends up being in the right-hand corner. And then imagine where the shadow would be laying behind or beside that image. So if the light bulb's up in the right, then the majority of the shadow is going to end up on the left side. So you can add shadows to your different images that you're drawing or your letters, and having this in your back pocket as something to add. Usually I add it when I'm done, but you can add it along the way if you have the time, is to really help bring that little bit more life to what it is that you're drawing and just make things pop a little bit more. Kind of, if you look at a picture kind of before and after, maybe you could challenge yourself to do that, is do one look at it, you know, take a picture of it before you put the shadows and then do the shadows and then look at it and see what the difference is for you. Sometimes you just have to practice on where you want to put that shadow. Sometimes it's difficult to decide. But certainly Google other things or look at any of the graphic recordings that I've done and notice sort of where I've put shadows and what does that look like. So they don't have to always be gray. I love doing gray for mine, but you could also do other colors to kind of add a little bit more fun to them. Another thing is that we're not going to have a lot of time to talk about today, but just something to take into consideration is the idea of what I'm calling visual metaphors. And these are images or ways of capturing that help relay an idea a little bit deeper. Sometimes I talk about them as like an anchor image. So this one here on the left, the iceberg, for example, is like very common one, right? What's above the surface, what's below the surface. And that might end up being, let's say, you know, using it as an anchor image. You don't have to use a visual metaphor as an anchor image, but if you wanted to, that might be your primary image. And maybe you even know that going into it. If you're going into a meeting or a session and you know there's going to be things we're going to talk about, but there's lots of stuff below the surface that we need to dive into. And then that's where that information is going to come in at the bottom. So you could pre-draw it if you wanted to. But what I would recommend if you're really fascinated in learning more about visual metaphors is I did a pre-conference workshop back in May of 2020 called Build Your Visual Vocabulary. And I spend the majority of the time just going through visual metaphors and taking ideas and drawing them out. What would it look like? If you really want to build your visual vocabulary, then I would suggest looking at even just a part of that workshop. I think it was about 2 hours as well. And just practice on like, how would I draw? Like that one was tech focused, right? So I think it was like, how do you draw artificial intelligence? How do you draw blockchain and stuff like that? So yeah, so take a look. If you need help finding the link, let me know. But if you search that and search was the Let's Sketch Tech group. So feel free to take a look. But just know that this is also another element to kind of sort of like, to me, is like the next step is like looking at visual metaphors and how can you draw things that kind of help articulate an idea even further. Okay, so I'm not seeing any comments coming in. So if you do, that's cool. Post them, and then probably what I'll do is I'll review all of the comments after I'm done the rest of the sections. I'm going to try to go through. See, I was worried I was not going to have enough time, and now I'm like, I'm only on part 6. So I'm going to probably go through part 6, 7, and 8 pretty quickly here, and so that we have time just to kind of quickly review the case study at the end. I just want to help show how you can piece it together, okay? So collaborating and sharing, honestly, this one probably could go very, like, this one and number 4, I think it was, with the connection and story, they could really live together a little bit more. Maybe I need to move them in the wheel, I don't know. But the idea of collaboration and sharing is really about how we're bringing voice and recognizing and how we are helping people collaborate through the use of images. And if we're helping people, if we're calling this visual communication method, then we really need to strongly consider how people are collaborating, or what's the collaboration piece, or how is this going to be shared? Going back to question 1, how is this going to be shared with everybody? How are people going to connect with it after the session is done? Because to me, it's just enough, or it's even more valuable after a session has happened, because we have this beautiful thing that we can look at after and reflect on and question and use it as an accountability piece potentially to help that conversation get further and deepen that conversation. So taking into consideration how we are collaborating in the meantime, and maybe that kind of relates a little bit to what Nitya brought up just here in the comment about how are we collaborating in person, or how are we doing that digitally now or online now, and it's going to look different, and you have to be very mindful of how do we make sure that people feel valued and heard. And there's a story that I wrote, a little anecdote here about, I was in a session, it's in the ebook, but I was in a session and was made very clear when the people stepped into the room that they didn't want to be there. So I really, I sat with myself for a minute and I regrouped myself with the facilitator and just said, okay, the energy in the room didn't feel good. So I really leaned in on what the people were saying that I knew were not happy to be there. And, you know, they made an offhanded joke about something. So I was like, oh, this is the doorway for me. So I drew the image, even though it didn't really have much to relate to what we were talking about at the time. But I just snuck this little graphic in here of what they were joking about. And at the break, they came up to the graphic and they pointed and they laughed, and like we had won them over at that point as outside consultants, trying to convince them that this was worthy of their time for us to hear what they had to say. Felt really good that we were able to do that in a way that felt really authentic to our process and how we wanted to work with them through the day, but doing that in that way. So just a little anecdote to get you thinking about what does that collaboration and sharing, how can that look like? How can we deepen those relationships with one another? I have 2 extra C's that I kind of throw in here. The next one is culture. And at the end of the day, I think we just need to be mindful of how we represent culture in what we're doing and how we represent the people in the room. For a long time, I shied away from drawing people with different skin tones, but I've kind of embraced that in the last year and really highlight the diversity of the people that potentially would be like in the digital room, making sure that people feel like they are a part of the process if they could see themselves related in it. I think one thing that I always just try to mention as well is just be really mindful of what's the word, like cultural appropriation or like tokenized things, because you know, if it's a delicate subject and we throw in images that might be a little bit more stereotypical, or we draw people in clothing that's a little bit more stereotypical, then what we're kind of doing is the opposite of collaboration and sharing and connection. We're creating a divide. So I think, like I said, I am absolutely no expert in talking about culture whatsoever. But just from my experience, I think it's just something to make sure that you're aware of. And if you want to draw something that you think the group would like, but it has a cultural element to it, like I just think about like indigenous community, like drawing a feather, like that might not be actually appropriate to do. So just be mindful of that is what I'll say. And then the next one is community. And I think also is like recognizing how we're building community and being really intentional about how we're building a community by allowing this process to unfold and communicate in this way, in this visual way, and how the importance of having the longevity piece of this is just solidified in knowing that we're helping build community and that we're like in a really powerful space to be able to contribute to building that community. And I thought this one here was one I did back in the fall, and I really loved, and I got a lot of wonderful feedback from it. And for me, like this is a topic I really like capturing. So, all right, part 7, criteria and synthesis. So, one of the other questions I get all the time is how do you decide what to draw? And for me, at the end of the day, it's always about how can I listen, think, and then ultimately draw and write out what it is that the people are saying, right? So that's going to be your challenge moving forward too. So like I said, I think as well as building your visual vocabulary, you want to take the decision process out of it because you're also trying to listen what they're saying. But if you're listening to what they're saying, you can't be thinking in your mind, oh, what should I draw? Or, oh, what does this mean? Or I don't know what to do. So you're trying to take out that decision-making process, those decisions, take out as many decisions as you possibly can. And you can do that by trying to synthesize what you're listening to and trying to build those connections before you even put pen to paper. Sometimes that's easier said than done, but that's basically the process that you're going through. You're going through a checklist in your mind from part 1, what's important here, what do I need to capture? And then so that's your criteria, is like what it is, what's my purpose here? How am I helping people connect here? What can I capture here to make sure that we reach our end goal? Like I don't have to capture, you know, Fred's story that he said from the weekend, like, does that relate to what we're talking about? No, so I don't need to capture that, right? It also is a good tool if people end up talking themselves in circles, so that you are capturing in a way that you can also point and be like, yeah, we got it. Let's move on to the next thing, right? So this is one of my little visual metaphors, I guess you could say. If you've ever learned an instrument, guitar, for example, you're fumbling and you're like, you can't grab the chords right, and it just doesn't sound right. So you're like trying to build that confidence, and then you're starting to get it. And at the end, you're looking like, oh yeah, I can do this. Like, this is no big deal. So that's sort of the process that you're probably going to have to go through. Is you're going to be fumbling a lot in the beginning. You're going to be like, oh, what's important here? How do I make these pieces put together? But the more you practice it, just like anything, you're going to get more and more comfortable. You're going to get more and more familiar with, like, listening to cues, listening for the cues that people give on what you should be capturing and what you feel like is the most important for the group based on answering those questions from part 1. And then, you just are, as you're building your visual vocabulary, it kind of gets you closer and closer to that part 3, right? And you're looking for more challenge, hopefully. So yeah, so like I said, we're building a visual vocabulary. We're looking at how to synthesize that information. We're listening for those golden nuggets. We're listening for ways that people talk about, like, often people will summarize themselves. We're looking for that needle in the haystack, right? We're looking, as we're listening, we don't have to capture everything. So we're listening for those things, moments where someone says, well, I don't really know what I'm trying to say here, but I guess ultimately blah, 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 and then you go, oh, that's it. That's what I should be capturing. Someone might ramble on for 5 minutes and then they might end up summarizing themselves. Or you could be listening for those pieces and then help them summarize themselves by saying, especially if you're in a session and you have the luxury to say, what I hear you saying is blah, blah, blah is really important to you. Or what I hear you saying is blah, blah, blah is something that we should put down as an important action item. And then the person goes, yeah, or no. So you're practicing your listening skills just as equally as your drawing skills. You're listening and your thinking skills, processing while people are talking. And that just takes a lot of practice. But yeah, the more situations that you're in and you take on this role, the quicker it will happen for you. So also another plug for the Let's Sketch Tech. I did a talk in May of 2020 inside the mind of a graphic recorder, and I took a TED Talk and I broke it down to and I sectioned it out, and there's videos of me drawing while the person's talking, and then I did it in 5 steps where then I said, this is why I made this decision. This is why I made this decision. This is why I captured this or this or this. So if you want to sort of see that unfold of how I went about making those decisions, that would be a really good talk for you to check out as well. And like I said, it's through the Let's Sketch Tech community. So if you just search inside the mind of a graphic recorder with my name, you should be able to find it. All right, quickly here, last one, contain and structure. So if you know the agenda, if you don't know the agenda. If you know the agenda, you can separate your space. You can say, okay, we're spending half an hour on this, half an hour on this, half an hour on this, half an hour on this. Then you could say, okay, I'm going to chunk my space into 4 chunks. Good to go. If you don't know, it's a little bit more difficult. If you're constrained by time, let's say it's 30 minutes, then chances are you're going to have lots of space. But if you're trying to cram a whole 8-hour day into one image, going to be more challenging. So just review it if you have the agenda, see how you might pick your space. I think the thing to decide ahead of time, if you can, if you don't know the agenda, is just the flow. And I'll give you some examples here of a flow that you could choose. A little tip here is like sticky notes, or you can have digital sticky notes by making layers in your digital, in your program. So there should be a layer option and you can create a layer, make a note, and then hide the layer. And then what you can do is go back to those layers, decide if that's information that is worthy or important enough to capture permanently and then incorporate them. So a little bit of like a hack way to do digital sticky notes is like doing it in layers, or you could actually have little pieces of paper, be like, I don't know about this, if I should incorporate it, make a little note, and then go back to actually doing your permanent drawing or chart. Another reminder is that white space is your friend. Here's a little example of a graphic recording, and highlighted in yellow is the white space. White space is important to kind of help make a piece feel like it's just breathing, so you can very specifically see the different aspects of it and how they relate to one another without questioning at all. Like, you want to be able to look at it and go, oh, I know that that relates to that and that relates to that. And then also, if something gets like thrown in close to the end or halfway through that actually relates to another piece, you still have space to add it in. So white space is sort of like the unsung hero in a way of doing these charts and capturing, because you might need it. And if you don't need it, it just gives a little bit of breathing room, which is awesome. And then in terms of like structure, we've got your key ideas and your supporting details. So you've got your big ideas are a little bit larger, and your supporting details are a little bit smaller. So just considering hierarchy, there's a little bit of a hierarchy there. And then, like I said, if you don't have the agenda, maybe you want to decide ahead of time what your format's going to look like. And here's just a few examples. We've got popcorn style, which is usually mine, or journey. Those are usually my top two. We've got a bit of a pre-planned one if you did have an agenda. Journal, so kind of like portrait style, more like top down. Traditional, more left to right. Mind map. The popcorn and the journey one can be done in many different ways, how they're connected. So yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can go about doing it, but I think as long as you have some breathing room with your white space and can connect it, and someone can look at it during or after the session and understand the flow of conversation, then you're good to go. So that's it. Visual communication method, 8 parts with the pizza. Thanks for listening to that part. And friendly reminder, if you're joining us late, email me at order@MindsEyeCreative for your free Pizza Ops sticker, your die cut sticker, and would love to send one to you. Compliments of me for being here today. So I'm not seeing any more comments. So please, this is our time. We only have 15 minutes left. So I would love to take this time to just really quickly go through play Pictionary to practice. Oh no, there's a whole bunch of comments. Okay. The program is Autodesk Sketchbook. If you scroll up, actually, I'm just going to post it again, and then the team can. The link is here. Okay. So, all right. Okay, sorry, I'm just seeing here. Program is there. They're going to reshare that here in a second. Downloading the ebook, it's awesome. Thank you, Bernice. Love the people. Thank you. Play Pictionary to practice. Oh, I'm hoping you're making that a suggestion to do, not for us to do right now. I wish we had time. Thank you for those comments so far. But yes, I think playing Pictionary to practice is a great idea. I did a Jack in the Box, not Jack in the Box, like Jackbox. Like, there's a game on there for drawing, which is really fun. Here's the program I use. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to quickly go through our case study. If there's any other comments or questions about anything in the method, please let me know. I hope it makes sense. If it doesn't, I also would really love to know that, because like I said, I published the ebook in November, and this is my first opportunity to talk about it as a whole. So if anything was muddy or unclear, or you don't understand how they relate to one another, I would absolutely love to hear your feedback. So Pizza Ops. All right, so case study. Community Climate Change Project was a project that a friend of mine actually was putting together. She wants to figure out how to be able to support things in her community and how to inspire other people and how people can inspire one another to make small changes in their life to contribute to the idea of fighting climate change. So this was the final graphic. Okay. So Part one, what we did is we got clear and specific on what the goal was. You can even see here in the back, there's actually 2 pieces of paper. One said, I can't remember, some things about the project, and then there was a brief agenda. So we got really clear about what the goal of, I think it was a 2-hour session, what the goal of the 2-hour session, what did we want at the end of it? That helped me understand how to be able to create the image and capture it in a way that really was impactful for the group. We got specific on what it was. The group knew why they were there. Yeah, so we got that. We answered our questions. Check mark. Consistency and speed, just a few things here. You can kind of notice as a whole, but I tried to stay consistent with my lettering and the size of things and the hierarchy and color scheme. And of course I had to be speedy at the same time. So check mark there, and that takes practice, but check mark there. Chart and surface, it was really important for us to have it on paper. We were in a small room, and or there was quite a few of us in a not so small room. And so chart, so we had decided that we wanted a paper one because they are going to host other events, and we're working on organizing a conference at the time, and they thought it would be really powerful to bring that up to a future meeting. So the paper and largeness of it was really important to the group. So paper made sense, and I have lots of experience photographing them now, so that's capturing it digitally is not a problem. And we wanted people to interact with it as well. You can see some sticky notes there in the corner. That was really important as well. So paper for the win. Connection and story, you can actually see here there was a few times where we actually were, I was actually writing out the word connection, which I thought was perfect for this example. It was really about storytelling. So you can see like there was conversations there about community gardens. We really want to get stuff done, and off-grid living, and helping build those stories in there. There was some conversation about that. So it did its job in terms of making sure that I was capturing the voices that people were bringing forward to talk about. So check mark there. Concept and sketch, you can see here's a few examples of lines, boxes, lettering, not so much bullets, but just some small graphics. Yeah, we've got an arrow there at the top, so we incorporated quite a few of those sort of foundational essential elements. So check mark there. Collaboration and sharing, this is a perfect example to, see here that people were interacting with it. I had the luxury of that for this session, which was amazing. And we were sharing together in the way that we created the agenda, allowed for a lot of space for people to express their voices, which I thought was really great too. So we went into it knowing that we were going to collaborate, but at the end of the day, you just know that you always hold that space for collaboration and sharing, whether or not there's a lot of people talking or not. So check mark there. Criterion synthesis. So you can see here I've got main ideas and sort of the, not full banners, but sort of lines above and below the words. So we've got larger words that were sort of the bigger ideas, and then we've got our supporting details. So, you can see here, for example, trying to synthesize something so I'm not writing out full sentences. There's actually a really great example there, kind of in the top. I don't know if you can see my my cursor here, but here in the middle to the top of chunking, we've got our boxed text, and I actually had the color, the orange and the blue and green around them. Some other comment, but so we've got, I knew we needed a timeline. That was really important. I knew it might not come up, but I was prepared for the timeline, shall I say. So I knew it was a possibility, but I didn't know, depending on how the conversation was going, that there was going to be a timeline. So so I kind of put some of those words in there as if there was going to be a timeline, and then it felt right. So then I put the timeline in there, even though some of the ideas didn't necessarily need to go on the timeline per se. I think it still worked out. But trying to synthesize, so you can see there's not a whole lot of words per each group, because it's you don't have to write out full sentences about one idea. All we need is like community breakfasts, boom. We didn't need to plan the whole thing. There might have been a 5-minute conversation about community breakfasts, but I didn't have to write all the details about community breakfasts. I just had to make sure that I synthesized it to those 2 words and got it on there. I feel like there's more I could say about this one, but moving on. So contain and structure, you can kind of see I had a bit of an odd, not odd, but it's just a bit of a different structure to it because we had the timeline at the bottom. So we've got the timeline with the arrows that are pointing to the different sections. And some of it probably could have used a little bit more white space, like the more on the left, but that's okay. But then I use these sort of like gray bubbles at the top to connect or to like structure that because that was like a separate, its own kind of conversation about create a team, clear vision, understanding each other at the top there. There's like, it was just sort of like, so I'm just containing it there. It didn't necessarily live anywhere in particular. It didn't live with anything on the bottom, but it was together. And then the stuff on the mission and the vision, and then there's like, you can see how without even doing a whole lot of lines, there's the words that relate to that and the conversation that related to the mission and vision, they're all together. And then we've got our beautiful white space around it to help separate it. If you don't have the luxury of a lot of white space, that's where you can get your boxes and your lines involved. But yeah, I think we've got like a decent amount of like the summit there on the left, you know, that is closed with kind of some loopy lines, so that's kind of contained. But so it almost has a bit of, it's not just one, this maybe is a good example, it's not just one structure. This ended up being kind of multiple in a way, like because we've got the timeline and then sort of a few different areas with some additional information. So part 8. So that's pretty much it. I don't think I have any more slides. Maybe I'll just go back to the pizza ops because it's fun. So we've got 5 minutes. Wow, that time went by so fast. And I'm so grateful for you to be here with me today. And I really, really truly at the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for coming. And I really hope that if this is your first sort of time on this journey, that this gives you the confidence that you can do it without feeling like you have to know how to draw a whole bunch, because as you saw, drawing is just one piece of the big puzzle that visual communication is. Friendly reminder, if you want your sticker, then email me there with your address. Also, I did throw in as well, if you would like some cheat sheets on some of the drawing elements, like a full page on like bullets and lines and all of that, I'd be happy to send that to you. Is there something else? Oh, someone said something about wanting to learn how to do banners. So I also have a cheat sheet on banners. If you would like that, just email me at that address as well, and I'd be happy to send that to you as well. Okay, wow, I'm seeing all these comments now. Wonderful. I'm really, really glad that this has been helpful for the people that have commented. Drawful, the Jackbox game. Thank you. The DevOps Party Games invited me to be a person on their thing in November, and yeah, so that was fun. That is a full board, lots of information. How long would that take you to capture? So that one in particular was 2 hours. I don't think I'm lying. I'm pretty sure it was only a 2-hour session. But the more you practice, the faster you get as well. So I also knew the agenda going into it, but I always just start with the title is what I always start going into it. How do you make the trade-off between sharing enough information without overwhelming people with information? I think that's where this practice of synthesizing comes in, to be honest with you, because if I'm reading that correctly, is the trade-off of sharing enough information by capturing it, I hope is what you mean. Because, yeah, you really are going to work your synthesization muscles. So instead of writing out a whole whack of stuff, work on trying to distill what was just said in as few words as possible, and try to let go of the idea of having to capture every single thing that is being said. I think that's probably one of the most difficult things to rid of, is the habit of having to write down everything. And I think because I speak for myself anyways, in school, haven't learned strong and effective note-taking skills, period. So we just, our inclination is just to write as much as we possibly can. And it is literally impossible to do. We can't write as fast as someone speaks. So that's going to be a challenge, is to break through the habit of feeling like you have to capture everything. And if you can work on synthesizing that information, and also if the details are important to the group, then you are going to have to write more details, and that's just it, right? And if the group, if the people who were in that room, virtually or not, were there, it will make sense to them. It might be crowded, it might have a lot of information on it, but it's going to make sense to them. Whereas someone who wasn't there, it might not make as much sense to them. It might look too crowded, but that's fine because it might not be for them, right? So those are things to kind of keep in mind. And that's why you got to ask those questions at the very beginning. Who's it for? How is it going to be shared? Is it for the people in the room, virtually or otherwise, or is it for people who weren't there, right? So maybe you want to focus less on or more on the synthesizing of the information and less on the details, maybe for people who weren't there, because you don't want to overwhelm them, right? So I'm not seeing any other comments. I really hope that I answered all the questions. I feel like I might have missed one way in the beginning. But yeah, maybe it was just about the digital tools. But yeah, so I think we're pretty much at time here. Please, we would love to get feedback about the session. So you'll see there at the very bottom, we've got a survey, and the event code is 12579. So please, if you have a minute, if you wouldn't mind just clicking on that link, following it, and then typing in the event code so that we can get feedback about this session, and potentially bring more to the community. So I'm going to hop off. Any questions, or if you want any of those resources that I said or the sticker, please email me, and I will certainly get back to you next week with any information or any of the requests that you have. Thanks again to the Microsoft React team for inviting me, and Nitya in particular for inviting me to be here today. It's been such a pleasure to spend this Saturday afternoon with you, and yeah, hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks, everyone.